Hello again, guys and girls, the Gears of War community. Welcome back. This is episode 4 of the Road to Gears of War series. For those of you who are new, this is a series where we discuss the things that should have been changed or should be changed for the best Gears of War game possible, and what would be the most likely next Gears game, Gears of War 4. And, if that were to happen, this would be a great series for us to get our opinions out there. I lead the charge with my own opinions, but this is a discussion series. This is for people to discuss their own opinions in the comments section and leave what they think down there. So today we are discussing the Gnasher. And, oh yes, before I get into it, the gameplay you're watching is of another GB gameplay. I'm putting both maps in of a GB match. We were playing a team. They weren't fantastically great, so it wasn't that much of a challenge, but I did get some sexy shots in there, and so I thought I'd slap it in, and you guys can enjoy some crazy torque bow and snipage and a bit of Gnasherage. I don't know if those are words. They shouldn't be words. If they're words, I'm disappointed in the English language. But yeah, okay, so today we're talking about the Gnasher. The reason we're talking about the Gnasher is because I'm doing weapons, I'm going to try and get weapons done, but as for the Gnasher, I'm going to link it with movement, because Gnasher and movement are basically two sides of the same coin when it comes to the way you use that weapon. And so basically, I'm going to do next week, and I'm going to break the chain. I'm going to do movement instead of a different weapon, and this week I'm just going to focus on the Gnasher and the way it works, and maybe cover a little bit about movement. But I want to break this up into three main parts: the Gnasher in Gears of War Judgments, pros and cons; the Gnasher in Gears of War 3, pros and cons; and the perfect combination of a Gnasher. So, Gears of War Judgment. Well, it was a good idea to bring back the power of all the weapons in Gears of War Judgment to make the game more skillful. It's just they brought in a bunch of strange mechanics which kind of took that skill away. It was a lot easier to hit shots because of the hipfire reticule, and this is something I'm going to keep hammering into you guys' heads, because I think that skill is the main problem we have in Gears of War, the thing that we're losing. And the reason, one of the main reasons that players don't pick up Gears of War and enjoy it as much is because they get hammered so bad. And Epic jump to the conclusion that they need to make the game easier, when that's not quite the case. But I'll cover that in a different commentary, and I think I have done it quite a few times in the past. But yes, skill. So they took a lot of the skill away in Gears of War Judgment, even though they made the Gnasher take more shots to kill. It's still... there are a few main reasons why they did this. So I agree with the power of the Gnasher in Gears of War Judgment, maybe not in contrast to other weapons. I think the Gnasher had the biggest hit to power, as in comparison to things like the Lancer, the Handburst, the Retro, and well, the Sword Off took a fairly large chunk of power downage. That's not a word either, is it? I'm a terrible commentator. But yes, the Gnasher took the biggest hit, I think, when it came to dropping the power of the weapons between Gears of War 3 and Judgment. But I do agree with the power of the Gnasher in Gears of War Judgment. What I don't agree with is with the mechanical changes that they've made to the gun, which make it a lot easier to use. Not just the fact that you can see the reticle on screen, but there are other things. For example, the spread is a lot wider. They did this to compensate for the fact that there is no longer a range drop-off. Now, I do not agree with that either, but I think the reason they got rid of that is because it decreases the amount of sponging that happens, because if the game is constantly having to decide what the weapon's damage is supposed to be doing while doing 1,000 different things at once, it can get a little bit muddled up, and that's where sponging comes in. So your shot doesn't do as much damage as it should be, or it should do. So that's why they got rid of, or that's why I believe they got rid of range drop-off. So they increased the Gnasher's spread to compensate for that, so it would be a lot weaker, as it should be. But the problem is, with the wide spread, it's now very, very hard to get ahead in a fight in Gears of War Judgment. Because the thing is, if I hit my shot directly on, so if I aim at someone directly onto him where he's in the center of my reticle, but we're at mid-range and he's aiming at me with just the end of his reticle, so either the left side or the right side, we're only going to hit each other for pretty much the same damage, because my shot is going to hit him with the 4 center pellets, while he's going to hit me with the 4 pellets to the right. That's the top 2 on the right and the top 2, or top, yeah, the right at the top. Oh, I can't even speak. Okay, so there's 2 pellets on the top right and there's 2 pellets on the bottom right, I believe. So yeah, there's 4 in the center, 2 top right, 2 top left, 2 bottom right, 2 bottom left. I think that's how it works, yeah. So he's hitting me with the same amount of pellets that I'm hitting him, so it makes it a lot harder for me to get ahead in a fight, because, you know, even though I have better accuracy, this guy is still hitting me for the same amount of damage, even though that I'm playing better than him. And with the fact that the hipfire reticle makes it a lot easier to hit someone, strafing and things like that just aren't really as useful anymore in Gears of War Judgment. On top of that, getting a body in Gears of War Judgment is very difficult, because they had to, because the spread is so ridiculously wide, they had to introduce this thing where if you're at point blank range, your Gnasher is inside someone, it changes where the shot comes from and it gives you an instant body. So that's another major change they made to the weapon, and I don't entirely agree with that, because it takes away the fact that maybe you want to chip away at someone, maybe you want to get a good few shots in, and then get that easy body with only a few pellets instead of trying to hit a full spread. No, it's a lot more difficult in Gears of War Judgment, because the full spread, or the chunking someone, only comes from hitting a full amount of pellets, so it's not really worth it. And basically, this all just kind of adds up to making the gun a lot more difficult to use effectively against someone else who is maybe a lot less skillful than you. Oh yes, and the last thing is the spread comes from the center of the screen, which I think, although it does open some doors, I think when the spread came from the center of the gun, especially when you're using certain types of movement, it gave you a lot more options when the spread came from the center of the gun as opposed to the center of the screen. So I just think that it was better on Gears of War 3 and Gears of War 2 when the spread came from the gun, because you could do things like up A's more easily. It allowed you to be more aggressive and pull off more or win more fights that may, in Gears of War Judgment, not go your way so well. Okay, so quickly onto Gears of War 3, the mechanics worked really well, but the weapon was ridiculously strong, and that goes for every weapon in Gears of War 3. I've mentioned this in my first episode. Pretty much every weapon in Gears of War 3 was overpowered in some way. It was really, really difficult to come back when you're down in a fight, because when you're down in a fight, you could just sit there and you could just aim at someone, and you didn't have to put any effort in, you didn't have to put any movement in. And it was the same with the Gnasher, it was the same with the Lancer, it was the same with every weapon. So that's just basically how it was. Now, I think for the best possible Gnasher, I think you just need to combine these two. You need to take the kind of range to damage ratio that is in Gears of War Judgment. I know that comes from the fact that the spread is so wide, but if you could try and transfer that into it being range drop off, so I know in Gears of War Judgment you have to be incredibly close to get a body. You could transfer that into Gears of War 3 so that the range drop off is incredibly short range, so that the weapon takes a lot more skill, and because the spread would be so tight. Oh yeah, and another thing, in Gears of War 3 the spread is different between the hipfire and the hard aim, which is just wrong. It's just plain wrong, because it takes a lot more skill to keep your movement going and hit shots, and people tend to when they want to do that, when they want to keep their movement going, it does make it a lot harder for both you and the other person to hit shots. So the other person is punished more just for trying to be more skillful and be the person who's aggressive. He's punished more because his shots, when it's best done hip firing when you're moving around, they just don't do the same damage. So the person who stands still, sits there and camps and hard aims his shots, he's rewarded for sitting there and camping. So yeah, that's another thing about Gears of War 3's weapon that just isn't quite right. But yeah, I mean, bring back the damage for the Gears of War 3 Gnasher and keep the mechanics of it so it keeps the skill of the weapon, so that when you're in a mid-range fight, you can actually get ahead through strafing and other things. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple really. Keep the mechanics of Gears of War 3's Gnasher, but bring down the power. That is a very simple way of putting the weapon ahead and making it the best possible Gnasher. Of course, you would do similar things with the other weapons, not just bring down the power of the Gnasher alone, because every weapon, like I say, is overpowered in Gears of War 3, and it's all incredibly easy to get kills with. But yes, that is just how it is. This was a lot simpler episode than the previous one, so I hope you enjoyed, guys. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.